rebuild our society, to be successful there. And one of the main things they think they could be successful in the information society is intellectual property rights, and this is where it comes from. So, and what they do is not only something very far away on the international level, but the European Union is, in the moment, I think you know that this IP Rights Enforcement Directive 1, which comes from the European Union, now implemented in Germany, which possibly at some stage will force internet service providers to head over to the industry your address and your data. In this moment, it's very important to lobby on the European Union level also, because there's Intellectual Property Rights Enforcement Directive 2, which will introduce criminal liability, possibly not only for people who are making copies while making a business, but heading this over to private persons, which will be a major step to criminalize persons who use peer-to-peer networks at home. So this is what's happening there. And also, if you head over to a broader perspective, developing countries are the ones which have very much problems with intellectual property rights, because normally they are the ones who pay licenses, and because they don't have intellectual property rights, they pay all the time to the industry. And the European Union just is heading over to change their politics on intellectual property rights in bilateral agreements, these so-called economic partnerships agreements. And they start over to the US delegation is doing this since a long time. If they make a was heißt trade agreements. If the US delegation is negotiating US and trade agreement, they all the time are asking developing countries to get very strong intellectual property rights like those which are normal in the US. And the European Union just this year is starting over to say, okay, we want this also. We want very strong intellectual property rights from all the developing countries. So if you want to get something from us, you have to give us the strong intellectual property rights, which will only benefit the European Union actors. So this is why I think it's very important for us, not only because we were missed there at the broadcast treaty negotiations, but there are really bad things happening on the European level, and we have to go over. And now the next thing is, and in Germany we also should act, because our government has a real easy approach to intellectual property rights, and it's called more IP rights are better all the time. And if you look back, you can see it. They were the ones who were putting intellectual property rights very high on the agenda of the G8 2007. And they also are putting much pressure in the European Union to get more and stronger intellectual property rights. So this is one thing I would ask you for a discussion. What can we do here to head over to make our organizations a little bit more effective in influencing European politics, and over this the politics of the European Union on the international level? Another question is, what do you think? Do you think it's that short-time coalitions with industry groups are more dance with the devil or a legitimate tool? Would be interesting for me to hear what you think about that. This is what can we do to improve your involvement, and if you enjoyed the presentation, because this is the end of it.
Test. Oh. Okay, well, we'll start taking questions, so just please raise your hand, and Kate's going around and just giving you the microphone for any questions you have or ideas. No, back, please, back. Thanks. Or any comments on these questions we raised. Maybe there's something there you want to say. So, please. Yep.
Okay. First of all, I want to state something to the first thing, short-term coalition with industry groups. I think it's quite important because normally they have loads of money and have therefore quite an impact on the European level, since you need money for that. And if there's a industry group which has the same idea or supports our ideas, I think it makes much more sense to work with them. And otherwise, if we don't, everybody says, "Oh yeah, those small groups and with their funny ideas." But if we have backup by an industrial group, it's better. My question would be, actually, what are the ideas at the moment on the European level? Because I haven't...
Can you repeat it?
In the European level.
What's happening there?
Yes, on the IPR things.
Yeah, I think the main points were the ones I told you before. Is this Intellectual Property Enforcement Directive 2, which is very important for us, or will be important for us in several years here in Germany, because this will enact criminal penalties for normal users which are not doing any business, and this is another line which will be crossed in copyright, heading over from only working at the commercial era, going over to the private part. And
if you maybe have heard of the German Durchsetzungsrichtlinie, the IPRED 2 is the successor to that, so it's going to be even more harsh and even more evil if it comes through as it is proposed. So that's one of the main battlegrounds at the moment, to keep IPRED 2 out of the scope. And yeah, the second one is the EPAs, which is the European Economic Partnerships Agreements. Maybe you can say something more to that as well.
Yeah, there are a few. Some agreements are to be made till the end of the year, so it's a little bit of a rush. I think on the 27th of September there will be an action day as well for many groups which are acting again, but normally against these trade agreements in general. While we just at the Network Free Loanish, I think we just start to head over to the intellectual property chapters, because because it's very new. The EU position changed only at the beginning of this year, so they made something really new, and I can't see how it gets there. But what's to be done is really to raise awareness here and tell people here, come on, this is our governments which are doing a lot of shit for developing countries over there. And when they can't get their rights on the international level, they try to do in these trade agreements, and we have to stop them. And so it's a little bit where you're heading at. I'm heading more. My main interest for working politically is help developing countries. So I'm heading over to developing countries. And but for us, I think it's IPRED 2 for the first time, and then perhaps combine both these levels and see how intellectual property rights work on all the levels, and then change our minds on this kind of rights.
Okay. Any more questions? Nobody? Yeah, please.
Do you feel there's sufficient transparency about what WIPO is doing in their public representations? So on their website, is it very clear this process that they're going through, or do you have to investigate and sort of dig a little bit to find out at what stage things are at?
Oh, it's not very clear. If I went there first time, it was completely chaos and I understood nothing. So you can see there the official protocols. You wanted to know if you can see everything from the outside, how it works, and then start over. No, you can't, because your first thing is you have to learn to interpret what people say in there. So you have a big room with 400 people in there, 400 delegates, and then normally the last line is with NGOs. And normally you always sit there at the end, if it's an open session, and make notes from what the delegates are saying. So the first thing to learn is interpret what delegates say and compare it to what they said before, so you can see how they changed the position. And it's diplomatic language, so everyone is very, very friendly, and even if they think you are the biggest crap or the biggest or you're telling the biggest shit, they will smile to you and say, oh yeah, that's a very, very real point, but I think we should do something like that. So this is the first step. And then you have to interpret, then you have to learn who works together with whom, and why does, for example, when I heard from the US delegation we will change our position, why does not the US delegation put it on the table, but any other country coming from somewhere else putting that on the table? And you need people there who know that, and I got real luck because those guys from the Civil Society Coalition and CPTEC were very friendly to me, introduced me, took me to some meetings and say, hey, come on, Peter, you're American now, you have to go to the American interest group meeting, something like that. And without them, I would be completely lost over there. So that more and more organizations are coming over there, it makes more and more lobbying more and more easy because you have those networks and they can tell you what you see and explain it to you.
I would add that if you are interested in these topics, you would probably, as a normal person, would want to have a look at the websites of the EFF, of IP Justice, of Knowledge Ecology International, on our website, and so on. So that's the place where you can get informed, where these organizations translate the speech that is happening at the WIPO into common language. And then, if you want to get more active, you probably want to get involved with some organization.
Yeah, my follow-up question was, do you see the possibility for some sort of web tool to sort of do that translation, maybe just of the WIPO? Or because I know there's various groups like the Sunlight Foundation in the States are trying to make the US government more transparent. There's a group in the United Kingdom called My Society that are doing the same with the UK government, and some of the members, or some of the people that are involved with My Society in the UK are working on a project right now to make the United Nations more transparent, but that's the UN General Assembly and the Security Council. So they're taking meeting notes which currently are at temporary session URLs that can't be indexed. They're taking those and republishing them so they're public and can be indexed and searched and things like that. But the next stage is to obviously try and put a bit of analysis on top of it. But maybe these things can be tools for people like you who are actually needing to quickly find things. So I think there seems to be a general movement now that some of us can be hacking at more of an information level rather than at the network level.
Yeah, and it's a very important first step to do this, because if you don't do this and you don't have the information what they are talking inside, you can't react, and then it's something like with this World Copyright Treaty or the WPP2 treaties which were introducing TBMs on the international level on copyright and something like this, which only came we all became aware of that only in 1998 with when these treaties were introduced in the United States. Then the organizations there said, oh God, what's that? And then then they have to be implemented, and you can't change, and it's very hard to change it afterwards. So as early as you start this process and earlier you start acting, so better are your chances for success.
It's also a big question of manpower, obviously, because I mean it's maybe not so difficult to have a lot of people engaging in reading UN Security Council protocols and translating them, but the deeper it gets into detail and the deeper it gets into specific levels of politics, and IP rights are not such a popular level of politics, it gets very difficult to find people who actually are willing to do all this work. But I think it's a good idea to translate everything and to make everything visible. It's a really good project. I'd like to hear more about it, actually.
And I think in Germany we should do this also, because I know that the US interest group can ask for this clarification of position in the United States, but I am not aware of any such regulation. It's German government politics. I think when I ask them, what's your position, they say, go to the meeting.
Yeah, well, you will hear it. You could probably, as a parliamentarian, do an Anfrage.
Yeah, but this is
but not as a civil society group. You would have to have your parliamentarians actually working for you, which is sort of